Morning, Harvey.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Okay.
Let's see. I'm on my phone because I didn't eat yet. So I'll eat. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay, everyone.
Thank you. Well, not hard. It's good old Cheerios.
Oh, honey nut?
No, I mixed the regular with the cinnamon.
Oh,
New cinnamon they have now.
yeah. I know. I like the honey nut.
Oh, no.
Morning, Ted.
Morning, Marvin. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, good morning. Had a
Morning.
hustle out this morning.
You're scary?
Here?
But you're
Okay.
It's crazy, huh?
Okay. I am assuming that Erwin was davening and Bob was gabaying, Bob Bromberg, so that hopefully they'll be on shortly. Okay. I'm going to start with the sponsors, and then we'll get on with our material, okay? A Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Koningsberg. In memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Reuven ben Labush, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nisan Hara, Nisan ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg. In memory of their dear friend, Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann. In memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. The many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, Cheryl Scher, her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva. A Week of Learning, sponsored by Michael and Sharon Glass, in memory of his father, Yitzchak Tzvi ben Yechiel Michal. Today is Thursday, the 29th, and that is a day of learning sponsored by Sheila and Eli Zimmerman, in memory of her mother, Cyril Bas Menachem Mendel. And that is it. May the neshamas have an aliyah, Krank Rafia, Velti Yashir, Shem Latliya, and L'chol B'nai Israel, good bench yar. Okay. Yeah, Bidvaro. Okay. Harvey, welcome back. Don't see you there.
He
Okay.
was here.
Yeah. Okay.
You went to eat a cereal.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Today is 81.
Hey,
Okay. Hey, Aleph, Amud Aleph, starting at the top of the Amud, the Gemara. Okay. Just a quick review of the Mishnah before, right? B'chol ma'arvin u'mishtadfin chutz min hamayim u'min hamelech. With all items, one should be able to join to make a Erev Chatzerus, right? Or a Shituf Mabuot. And we're referring to foodstuffs, with the exception of water or salt, Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. That's the view of Rabbi Eliezer. Gemara is going to have to tell us why does he hold that those items are not viable. Okay? Rabbi Yehoshua Omer, Kikar hu iruv, that a complete loaf of bread should be used. Afilu ma'afa, even if the dough is baked, it has to be at least a seah, right? The amount of a seah. Vahu prusa But if it's, want to say broken, cut up, things like that,
In Irvin.
according to Rabbi Yoshua, ein ma'arvin ba, we're not able to use it. Kikar isar hu v'shalem. It has to be a whole loaf, okay, even if it's only the size of a isar, which we said could be as small as a silver dollar or maybe even a quarter, okay? Ma'arvin bo. Right? Now we're ready to jump into the Gemara, so to speak. All right, says the Gemara. Tanina, Chada Zimna, we learned this once already. What is it trying to tell us? Why do we have to repeat it, right? B'chol ma'arvin u'mishtatfin, chutz min ha'mayim v'hamelach. Okay, our Mishnah said that with everything one could use, right, all sorts of foodstuffs, right, for an eruv or a shituf mevuot, with the exception of water and salt. Amar Rabbah. Why was this needed to be said another time? Says Rabbah, la'afuke mid Rabbi Yoshua, to exclude the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua, the Amar kikar in midei achrina lo, because Rabbi Yoshua says it has to be a whole loaf, yes, but something else, no. Okay, so in other words, according to Rabbi Yoshua, only bread would be viable and not anything else. Okay, Kamash Malan Bakol. And therefore our Mishnah comes to tell us that with all things. However, Ative, Abaye brings a Braita, which cites as follows. Bechol ma'arvin, with all things one can make an eruv. Eruvei chatzerot, whether it's an eruv chatzerot, right? Ubechol, and with all things, mishtatfin shitufei mevuot. And with all kinds of, again, foodstuffs, one can join in a shituf mevuot. Velo amru la'arev bapat, ela bechatzer bilvad, says Abaye in the Braita. And we only said that the use of bread applied in a situation of making an eruv for a courtyard, an eruv chatzerot. Man shamat le, the amar pat. Okay, so the Gemara then asks, okay, a valid question here. Who was it that said it was only bread, right? And midei achrina lo? Yes, for bread, but anything else, no. Rabbi Yehoshua. That seems to be Rabbi Yehoshua, at least according to our Mishnah. Okay? Ukatani, but nevertheless, the Mishnah teaches bakol, with all things, right? Ela amar Rabba bar bar Chana. So Rabba bar bar Chana is going to bring us, however, an alternative explanation, right? And what does he say? La'afuke mid Rabbi Yehoshua. It does come, okay, to exclude the view of Rabbi Yehoshua, not so much because it said pat, but for a different reason. Da'amar shlema in prusalo, because he said it has to be a whole item, yes, and pieces or broken, no. Kamash malan bakol comes to teach us then with all. In other words, it doesn't have to be a whole loaf. Okay? Uprusa. And so the Gemara continues. If we're going to accept Rabba bar bar Chana's explanation, what about a piece or a broken piece? Mai tamalo. What would be the reason, okay, that Rabbi Yoshua would not accept a broken or a smaller piece? Amar Rabbi Yossi ben Shaul, Amar Rabbi, Mishum Eva. Says Rabbi Yossi ben Shaul in the name of Rabbi, because of jealousy. People would be jealous. Oh, he gave a whole piece. I was only able to give a half piece. Or this one is going to say, look, he only gave a half a piece and I gave a whole piece, right? Things like that. Now, Amar le Rav Acha Borei de Rabba, the Rav Ashi. And now we have another question being raised. Okay, to Rav Ashi. Irvu kulan beprusot, mahu. If all of the residents joined using partial pieces, broken pieces, right? What's the situation then? Okay. Amarle Rav Ashi, Shema Yachzor, Davar Lekil Kulo. It's possible, he says, that we're going to come back to still the same problem, the same situation, okay? Where some people will complain, some people will be jealous, some people will challenge, so on. Okay. Now, if we said that the Rabbi Yehoshua's view, excuse me, was either it had to be bread or it had to be a whole piece, right? Let's quantify and determine an examination of that approach. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Shaul, Nitla hamena kedei chalata. If somebody took from that dough, all right, a certain amount that they needed to be yotzei on fulfilling the obligation of challah, ukidei dimu'ah, or they took out from that dough a certain amount, okay, because that dough was a mixture of truma and regular produce, and you had to remove the truma from it, right? Ma'arvin loba, okay, you may utilize that, okay? Okay, we still may make a eruv with that, let's say, smaller or removed amount of dough, okay, that amount of loaf, right? Vahatanya, but wait a second, says the Gemara, isn't it taught elsewhere in a Braita, right? Kadei dimu'ah ma'arvim loba, okay? Namely, that the Braita is telling us, okay, that for this mixed truma and other produce loaf, once it's removed, we may utilize it to make an eruv, right? Kadei chalata, but if we've removed from that loaf dough to satisfy the obligation of challah, ein ma'arvim loba. We're not permitted to utilize that reduced loaf, let's say, for an eruv. Lo kasha. No, that does not have to be problematic. Okay? Why? Ha bechalat nachtom. Why? Because we're talking about dough that was taken by the baker, okay, which is going to see as a smaller amount. Ha bechalat bal habayit. And here, in the other case, we're talking about an amount of challah that was removed by a homeowner, particularly a woman who could have been baking challah to sell. Okay? And that's a different amount. The Tnan, because we have a Mishnah that teaches shi'ur challah, the measurement of taking challah, echad me'esrim ba'arba, it's 1/24th. Right? Ha'oseh esa la'atzmo. That's for one who is making it, okay, right, to either making it for oneself, ve'esa la'mishteh beno, okay, or making it for a family celebration, a wedding, for example. Okay? What is that? Echad me'esrim va'arba'ah. That is 1/24th. Okay. Nachtom, a baker, shehu oseh limkor bashuk, that he's using it to sell in the marketplace, and you don't want the baker to suffer a significant loss. V'chein ha'isha she'asta limkor bashuk, or likewise a woman who sells in the marketplace. Echad me'arba'im u'shmona. All they require is 1/48 of the total amount of dough to be taken for challah. Okay? Right? So Rabbi Yochanan ben Shaul's statement was made for the baker. Okay? Now, Amar Rav Chisda. So Rav Chisda gives us a qualification with the following. Tafra b'kesam. Let's say you had 2 pieces of dough, okay, that neither of them were large enough to be considered whole, but you put them together, right, by sticking a small piece of wood in between, and they stuck together. Now they're large enough. Ma'arvin lo ba. He says, Rav Chisda, that it's possible to join and use that for an eruv, right? Vahatanya ein ma'arvin lo ba. But wasn't there a braita that taught that one is not permitted to use it to make the eruv? Lo kasha. Now that does not have to be a difficulty. Why? Ha, the yediyah tifra. Here in one case where it's visible, the joining, let's say, where they're joined together, right? Ha, de lo yediyah tifra. In the other case, we're saying it's where one does not notice, one cannot tell where the joint, where the 2 pieces were joined together. Okay? So that one would be usable for the eruv. Now, Amar Rabbi Zera Amar Shmuel. He's going to give another example, another situation. Right? Ma'arvin bapat ores. Rav Zera, in the name of Shmuel, says one can use for their eruv chatzerot not just bread made from wheat, but bread made from rice, ubepat duchan, or bread made from millet. Amar Mar Ukva, and Mar Ukva then adds a qualification, the following: the didi mifrashali mine de Mar Shmuel. It was personally explained to me, okay, says Mar Ukva, by the master Shmuel, right? Bapat orez ma'arvin, that rice bread one could use. Ubapat duchan ein ma'arvin, but millet bread one is not able to join for an eruv chatzerot. Now, Amar Rav Chia bar Avin, Amar Rav. Okay, so he's going to give another statement. Ma'arvin bepat adashim. Is it possible that we can make an eruv with bread made from lentils? Aini, is that at all the case? He says, is that really possible? Vaha hahi. But here he says we have this, okay, situation, right? Dahave b'shane demar Shmuel v'shadai lekalbe v'lo achla. We have a situation. How can you say that that kind of bread, okay, in other words, mixed grained bread, okay? We have a situation, he says, where indeed such bread was made, okay? And these are all considered inferior grains, so to speak, in the mixture, okay? And what happened was during the years that the master Shmuel attempted, he threw it and fed it to his dog, and the dog wouldn't eat it. And remember, something to be considered food, it has to be ra'ui la'achilat kelev. Okay? So the Gemara says, Hahi deshar minim havya. That was because it was made up of a variety of flours, different inferior grains. Dichtiv, why? Because we have a source, okay, from a Navi, right, that says, Va'ata kach lecha chitim u'sa'orim u'pul va'adashim v'duchan v'kusmin. That he was told, okay, in this case, Yechezkel, to make a bread from wheat, from barley, from beans, from lentils, from millet, from what else? Spelt, right? Etc. Rav Papa Amar, Hahi Tzluha. Okay? He says, that was baked, but So'at Ha'adam Have. The reason, he says, that bread was so detestable is because human excrement was used, okay, as the source of heat to bake the bread. Okay, Dichtiv, because it was written shortly thereafter also, Vehi begalaleit sa'at ha'adam ta'agena le'eneihem. Right? That you should bake it with human feces before their eyes. So Gemara asks, Mai v'ugat se'orim tochalna. So what then about this pasuk that says you shall eat it like a loaf of barley? Okay, that it was called barley bread, this bread that Yechezkel made. Amar Rav Chisda l'se'orim. Okay, why? Because we mentioned it l'shi'urim, not se'orim, but l'shi'urim. It was mentioned by measures. Rav Papa Amar arivata ka'arivat se'orim. Rav Papa explains the pasuk that their mixture was more like the shape, the mixture of barley bread, velo ba'arivat chitim, and not like a mixture, a production of how you would make normal bread from wheat. Okay. Now, that brings us to the end of that discussion and to a new Mishnah, right? So it would appear at this point, by the way, that bread was not the only item that could be used for making either Eruv Chatzerot, Shituf Mabuot, certainly. Now, having said that, we continue, however, with the next Mishnah that wants to indicate that the process is a little bit more complicated. Matnitin, says our Mishnah, Notein Adam Ma'ah Lechenvani Ulenachton, Kadei Sheyizke Lo Eruv. You go, and you didn't bake the bread yourself. You went to your local Aroma, you went to Grove, whatever, you bought the bread there, and you paid for it with money. Is that payment of money considered an adequate, let's call it acquisition for you to be able to use that bread now for your Eruv, or for your joining in an Eruv? Okay, that's what the beginning of the Mishnah seems to say. Okay, Divrei Rebbe Eliezer. That's the view of Rebbe Eliezer, right? That you could give money to the storekeeper or the baker, and therefore you will gain acquisition, right, to use that bread for the Eruv. However, the Chachamim omrim, but the sages say, lo zachulo me'otav, that the use of the money does not reflect adequate, proper acquisition of that bread or of that foodstuff. But the Mishnah continues over next Amud. Umodim b'shar kol adam, shezachu lo me'otav. But in regards to other situations of paying money to other people for items, that does acknowledge valid acquisition through money. She'ein ma'arvim la'adam ela me'da'ato. Why? Because one cannot acquire ownership of that item for the purpose of the Eruv unless it's done with one's consent, with one's awareness. Now, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, B'med Dvarim Amorim, what are we talking about? Be'eruvei Tchumim. Says Rabbi Yehuda, we're only talking about Shabbos boundaries. Aval be'eruvei chatzerot, but in regards to a courtyard eruv, ma'arvin leda'ato, v'shelo leda'ato. One can make an eruv chatzerot, okay, and join whether it's with the person's knowledge or without the person's knowledge. Why? Lafija sachin la'adam shelo b'fanav. Why? Because we can give a benefit. In other words, we can create ownership, well-being to a person with not in their presence. Ve'ein chavim la'adam shelo b'fanav. But, says the Mishnah at the end now, but we cannot make an obligation on a person not in their presence. In other words, we can't give them a disadvantage, okay, without their knowledge. Now, Gemara wants to ask, "My Tama de Rabbi Eliezer?" Okay, why is Rabbi Eliezer's view? All right. In other words, number one, that you can't pay the baker or the storekeeper, and therefore be zocher, gain ownership. Okay. But others, okay, the question is, what about others? After all, the Gemara is going to tell us now the following, okay? My Tama de Rabbi Eliezer, ha lo mashach. Maybe the reason Rabbi Eliezer holds us is that he feels that there has no actual physical act, okay? In this case, meshicha, drawing it closer, okay? Could have raised the point, hagba'ah, could have used another example, lifting it. That's also a siman, but meshicha is a simpler example. Amar Rav Nachman bar Rabba bar Avuha says, Asa'u Rabbi Eliezer ke'aba prakim b'shana. No, it's possible, he says, that Rabbi Eliezer identified the use of money as a means of acquisition similar to 4 times of the year, namely before 4 holidays, Pesach, Shavuot, beginning of Sukkot, and last days of Sukkot, 4 times of the year. Ditznan, as taught elsewhere in another Mishnah, Ba'arba prakim elu, at these 4 times of the year, right? Mashchitin et hatavach ba'al korcho, mashchitin et hatabach, that in a sense, we coerce, we force the ritual slaughterer, okay, to slaughter the animal even against his will. Afilu shor shaveh 1,000 dinar, even to slaughter an ox that's worth 1,000 dinar, ve'ein lelokeach ela dinar echad, but the purchaser only wants to buy a single dinar's worth, kofino to lishchot, we force him to slaughter. Okay? And Rabbi Eliezer could say, in this case too, it's just like those. You have a deadline, people need the bread, okay, and therefore he could argue the parallel. Lefichach, imet, says the Mishnah, coming back, that Mishnah. Therefore, if the animal, the ox, were to die, mate lelokeach, okay, it's the purchaser that suffers the loss. So the Gemara says, mate lelokeach, the purchaser suffers the loss. Ha lo mashach, but he never really took mishicha, he never really formally acquired it through an act. Amar Rav Huna b'shem mashach. No, we're talking about a situation where he did physically acquire it by drawing. Ihachi, if that's the case, ema seifa. I would say, well, what about the rest of that Mishnah, where it says, B'shar yemot hashana enochen. The rest of the days of the year, that use of money as a valid means of acquisition doesn't apply. Lefichach imet mate lemocher. If that's the case, if the animal dies, okay, it's a loss to the seller. Amai, why? Hamashach. But here you said, okay, it's a situation where the purchaser has already formally acquired it. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak, le'olam b'shel lo mashach. Now, says Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak, we're talking about a situation normally where the person has not physically acquired it. Hacha b'mayas kinan, and what are we talking about? B'shezichalo al yedei acher. It's possible that he acquired it by means of another person. Ba'arba prakim elu. Why? Because at these 4 times of the year, dizechutulo, that it's a merit, okay? And therefore it's a proper privilege, okay? That one can benefit another by acquiring something for him. Zachim lo shelo b'fanav, because we say that one can acquire as an act of benefit, even not in one's presence. B'shar yemot hashana, in the other rest of the days of the year, dichov hulo, where it's a disadvantage for him, ein chavim lo ela b'fanav. We cannot make any disadvantage for him unless it's in his presence. Now, v'Rav Ila, amar Rabbi Yochanan. And now Rav Ila wants to present to us, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, just one other aspect of that other Mishnah, namely, Ba'arba prakim elu he'emidu chachamim divreihem al divrei Torah. Okay? That on those 4 occasions, the rabbis established their determination, their words, on simply the understanding of the Torah. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, as said by Rabbi Yochanan, the Var Torah me'ot konot, that strictly from the Torah, money does work to acquire. Umepnei ma amru meshicha kona, and on what basis, however, did the sages then say that there has to be a physical act in order to qualify as acquisition? Gezerah shema yomru lo nisrafu chitech ba'aliyah. because the rabbis made a decree lest a situation occur, okay, that, right, we might have a incident where the seller is still holding on to the produce, okay, before the purchaser has gained it. And while it's in the seller's domain, let's say, it burns, caught on fire, it's destroyed after the purchaser has paid the money. And as a result, it becomes the purchaser's loss, and he's out that money. Okay? And that's the situation. Now, at this point, our Gemara is going to continue with a new statement from the Mishnah, okay, where it says, "Umodim b'shar kol ha'adam chulei." Okay, right. So, what is the Gemara telling us? Man shar kol ha'adam. Okay, what do we mean when we say that Rabbi Eliezer held that the money was not acceptable as payment for bread to a storekeeper or a baker, but for other people, normally it's an acceptable transaction? Okay. Who do we mean by other people? Amar Rav, says Rav, Bal Habayit. It's the average balabas. V'chein Amar Shmuel, and likewise Shmuel, Bal Habayit. The Amar Shmuel, who says, Lo Shana Ela Nachton. This was only taught in regards to the baker. Aval Balabayit Kone. But with regards to a homeowner, okay, one can have a valid acquisition through money. Ve'amar Shmuel, Lo Shana Ela Mea. Okay. Aval Kli Kone. And there, okay, that they even taught in terms of Shmuel, okay, of a ma'a coin or other kinds of coinage, okay, that may be problematic for some reason as a means of acquisition. Aval kli, but if you were to exchange a utensil for the item, that's a different kind of acquisition, and therefore exchange is a valid means of acquisition. Konen. Va'amar Shmuel, and further Shmuel also said, Lo shanu ela da'amar lo zachali. Okay, that they only taught this in a situation where the person specifically says, okay, that zachali, I want you to indicate that it confers ownership for me. Aval amar aravli, but if the person, in a sense, the purchaser, said to even to the nachton, to the baker, aravli, namely, I want you to make this bread my portion of an eruv, shaliach shavye, it's as if he's made him his representative, okay, to make the eruv for him, ukane, and therefore, as a result, by appointing him his representative, his agent, he has again acquired it. Now, Amar Rabbi Yehuda b'med varim amorim v'chulei. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Says Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rav Yehuda, according to Shmuel, the law is like Rabbi Yehuda. V'lo od, not only that, ela kol makom sheshana Rabbi Yehuda be'eruvim, halacha k'moto. But he also says that any place that Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana, taught, right? In regards to Eruvin, the law follows his view, his opinion. Amar le Rav Chana bigda'ata, the Rav Yehuda. So now the Amora, okay, Rav Yehuda is being challenged by Rav Chana from Baghdad. And he says, right, regarding what Shmuel said, Afilu b'mabui shenitlu kurotav olechiav. Are we talking then about a situation of an alleyway where something happened on the Shabbat and its cross beam, its korah, or its lechi was removed? Amarle be'eruvin amarti lach, velo b'mechitzot. No, he says, I was referring to issues of eruv, but not regarding issues of partitions. Okay, and korah and lechi tie into the issues of partitions. Amar le Rav Acha berei de Rabba le Rav Ashi. Halacha miklal de pligi. So he's asking him now, okay, does this mean that there's a machloket here? Right? Vahama Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. But wasn't it said by Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, who clearly said, Kol makom she'amar Rabbi Yehuda ematai ubameh b'mishnatenu. Any place where Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, clearly the words, okay, right? In what case, all right, or at what point in our Mishnah? Eino ela lefaresh divrei chachamim. It's supposed to come, really, to explain the opinion of the rabbis, and therefore it's not a machloket, right? Velo pligi, and they don't argue, okay? Vaha anantanan, but here we teach in a Mishnah the following. Elsewhere, netasvu aleihem. If additional people, this was a previous Mishnah we learned this week, all right, or last week. If additional people joined with the existing residents of the Chatzer, mosif umizakeh, then one must add food, right? And one must grant ownership to them. Utzrich lahodia. And not only that, but one must also inform them. Hatam b'chatzer shebein shnei mevuot. There we said that dealt with a courtyard that was between two different alleyways, because the person making the shituf mavua might make it with the upper, let's say, alleyway, but the other people might decide, no, it's easier for us to go out through the lower alleyway. Okay? Va'ama Rav Shizbi. Okay, and in this case, right, says Rav Shizbi, who disagrees. Amar Rav Chisda, he says, what does he say? Zot omeret chalukin alav chaverav of Rabbi Yehuda. Doesn't that seem to imply that colleagues disagreed then with Rabbi Yehuda? Okay, so the Gemara, just to roll over a little bit, says, Ela gavra agavra karamit. Okay, you're contrasting one man's statement, namely Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, to another one man's statement, namely Shmuel. Mar savar pligi, umar savar lo pligi. One master holds that they agree, and one master holds that they disagree. Okay, and we're going to stop right there, okay? Because at that point, they go into trying to clarify, okay, does Rabbi Yeshua and Ben Levi and Shmuel, do they really disagree or not? That way we'll pick that up tomorrow and finish this parak, and then move right into the new parak. Okay, and the new parak is going to deal with some brand new topics. Okay, so everybody take care, stay well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a great
Thank
day.
you, Rabbi. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Have a good day.
My last one.